Amnesty International recently warned that little action has been taken to clean up the pollution caused by oil production in the Niger Delta region, either by government or the oil companies. The Movement for the Survival of Ogoni People, MOSOP, has also criticized the federal government over the non-implementation of the United Nations Environment Programme UNEP report 3 years after the declaration of environmental emergency in Ogoniland. The United Nations Environment Programme UNEP conducted an assessment on the environment and public health impact of oil contamination in Ogoniland in the Niger Delta region. UNEP made several recommendations to the federal government, the oil companies and the community to begin a comprehensive cleanup of Ogoniland. We had a chat with the chairman, Senate Committee on Environment, Senator Bukola Saraki, to find out how far government has gone in implementing the report.
I totally agree that government has not done enough, and the oil companies, in addressing this issue. Don't forget, some of these pollution you're talking about are spills of over 40 years. I mean, they're not spills of yesterday or the day before. And it's inexcusable. Some will even say criminal. Some will say it's an embarrassment that such spill still exists. And the UNEP report really was even an indictment that the body had to come outside to tell us what is wrong and what we need to do. Okay, the report did come, and I thought that was a awakening call to all of us. I said, look, this is embarrassing enough. Let us seize the opportunity of this kind of report and quickly address some of the issues that need to be addressed. Unfortunately, 2.5 years later, very little has been done.
Now, speaking about the UNEP report, the Movement for the Survival of Ogoni People, MOSOP, has criticized the federal government for the non-implementation of the UNEP report. As a chairman, Senate Committee on Environment, why has this report not been implemented almost 3 years since it was presented?
I think we can't say no movement. I mean, superficial scratching of the surface. I think there's been lack of commitment, political will, and sincerity. Look, when the report first came out, I know you can go and check the records. Being saddled with as Senate Committee Chairman on Environment, I was one of the first senators that took a visit to those sites. I went by myself, a couple of our senators, and we visited a lot of the sites to see for ourselves that the fact that despite many years, over 4 decades, you can still see that, all the oil spills, and there is clear for you to see. We saw the level, and it was clear that UNEP report that something needed to be done. We had meetings, we forced Shell to come for meetings. If you go back and check the records, the Senate committee hearings where we met with Shell, we're tough with Shell, we're hard with Shell. I mean, we're one of the first to get Shell to put into writing, to make a commitment on a program in ensuring the restoration and cleaning up of those areas. But it was clear that as we were working hard on Shell, clearly some other agencies of government, other parts of government, were giving Shell the view and the comfort that, they really need to do this. And we sounded like a lone voice out there. You will see my correspondences from the Senate committees, meetings from Senate to Shell, where we told them point blank that they must get this done. But what we expected at that time, we should have got cooperation and support from the executive arm. But unfortunately, the oil companies, as I keep on saying, these oil companies operate all over the world. And you should ask yourself, why we Shell behave in Europe, why we Shell behave in America, why we Shell behave even in Angola, and misbehave in Nigeria? It is because the government allows them to do it. That is the bottom line.
Now, what role is your committee playing to ensure that the UNEP report is implemented?
We went beyond the call of duty in ensuring oversight functions, going in to see. We made our recommendations clear that these needed to be done. Now, even at the beginning, when the executive in their committee, on the UNEP committee, came up with a recommendation that they wanted to set up this IPREP, go and check the records. I was one of those that objected to it and said that you cannot set up those agencies by just mere government pronouncement and policy. Those institutions must be set up by law. They must have pure guidelines and the act by which they were operating. Those agencies as a practice in all over the world, you cannot set up those kind of agency in the Ministry of Petroleum. They must reside in environment. The Ministry of Petroleum is about oil production. You cannot have a responsibility to produce oil, at the same time have a responsibility to protect the environment. It's a conflict of interest. I made a speech, I raised objection loud and clear. At a point, one was even being blackmailed that, one was just against the Minister of Petroleum doing the right thing. But I said, it cannot work. It will not work. And today, I mean, to say one has been vindicated, I don't get any happiness in that. I've got more happiness in them doing the right thing. Now the airport has pretty much collapsed. The staff there are not being paid. The place is not going anywhere. It had no plan to go anywhere. Most of these people were interested in was this $1 billion that Shell said they were going to break down. Once everybody had the $1 billion, oh my God, this airport, we must all stay with this airport, and forgot the today and tomorrow and the generations after. And we're back to square one. Nothing has happened. UNEP said clearly that there must be certain agencies that must be set up by law. Restoration, cleanup, and those are the things that should have been done. And the supervising industry for that, it's environment. We should not personalize these issues. It doesn't. Whoever is the Minister of Petroleum today will not be the Minister of Petroleum tomorrow. Whoever is the Minister of Environment today will not be the Minister of Environment tomorrow. We must look at best practices all over the world. When we started some of this, as we even went oversight, as our members of the Senate Committee, we had meetings in the United States with the Environment Agency to learn our best practices. And it's clear all over the world, these kind of things do not reside in petroleum. So from day one, the first step was faulty. So for some of us, we're not surprised that it cannot go anywhere. What they've been able to achieve are what I call the emergency immediate actions, like some of the health issues in cleaning up the place, providing clean water, preventing. Those are emergency action, short-term plans, and that is what the state governments will tell you they have achieved, federal government to an extent. But the long-term issues of cleanup, prevention, restoration, providing job employment in those opportunities in those areas, you can't do that. You can't do this kind of setup that was put in place.
Now, speaking about the NOSDRA bill, the NOSDRA amendment bill, why is it taking so long for it to be passed?
We've got to the third bill. We started the one section of the third bill, and despite all the efforts, unfortunately, it has stopped there. And I'm sure, because I know that the oil companies don't like that bill passed. And some of these oil companies are powerful agencies. They have capacity to lobby than people like me or by myself, or even our own members of the environment. But that bill is in the interest of Nigeria, might not be in the interest of oil companies. But the oil companies, despite what they tell you, don't want that bill passed. And unfortunately, they've had people, obviously, who are working with them, who are not looking at the interests of the country. And I put it down until that kind of bill that has those principles that I put in NOSDRA is passed, will not be able to prevent this kind of abuse of the environment. Because our bill was based on best practices that we did research all over the world. We had support from agencies all over, even parliaments. UK Parliament wrote reports supporting that bill. In the agencies in all over the world on environment gave us a lot of kudos to the bill, because the bill addresses the major issues. What is the major issue? Is that you got to make it less economical to abuse, right, than to protect. Today, if the oil company abuses the environment, the highest fine is pays ₦1 million. So at the end of the day, what incentive or what really makes a company review? In America, we've seen spills where companies pay billions of dollars. So as a company, you think twice before you spill. How can you have 40 years? For 40 years, those sites in Ogoni have been spilled. 40 years. And that company can still continue to talk about, I am going to restore or I'm going to clean up for 40 years. We're making a mockery of ourselves. A country like this, a country like Nigeria. And it's not that these companies don't operate in other parts of what they do. But they will tell you Where are the laws? Where are the guidelines? When we had the Bonga spill, as much as we shouted and Nosdra agency shouted, Shell is right. By law, you can't hold them, because the law does not in any way hold them responsible for some of these issues. So part of this is what the UNEP report picked up and advised that there must be laws and agencies strengthening the Nosdra to see that some of these things are done. But up to now, you will have expected collaboration between the executive. You will have expected even coming at executive bills, because UNEP recommended them certain recommendation. Those have been the actions that government should have taken. If what we were trying to do, where we got Shell to a point to made a commitment on a program, and the executive backed that up as well, where Shell is told, listen, if you don't do this, there are penalties, I am sure that Shell will clean that place up. There are sections that gives the agencies to look at some of these companies, to hold them accountable, to where they must pay compensations, where they must pay fees and fines if you don't clean up after so long. The fines are in line with today's market, not fining somebody 1,000 naira a day to another company that is producing revenues of billions. Do you understand? Does it? That it makes it economical to behave than less economical to misbehave. At the moment, it's more economical for another company to misbehave than behave. But in other parts of the world, it is more economical to behave than misbehave. And that was what some of the amendments of Nosdra Bill was doing, to address some of these areas, where those oil companies were held accountable to say, once you spill, I don't want to know, you got to clean it up. If you don't clean it up, these are the kind of penalties that will be due to you for not cleaning. Surely if there were penalties, it will not pay Shell for 40 years to leave that place not cleaned up. But because nobody's asking, do you understand? If it was being calculated on a daily basis, some astronomical figure, I don't need to go there. You don't need to go. Shell will be there in a jiffy to go and clean the place up.
Now, the National Assembly is nearing its final days, this assembly. What would you say have been the defining moments of the Senate in the last 4 years? The major bills and motions which were moved, something that Nigerians will look back and say, these were the highlights of this assembly.
For me, maybe I would say the area of health. I'll talk about the Senate, the National Health Bill that was passed, and the pension law that was passed. I think, to me, those are two major issues that I think will have an impact when you look years ago. In another area that I'll be speaking about, some of the things I have done is talk about the motion we've looked at on the issue of fuel subsidy. I think it has come to be part of this kind. I think this National Assembly will be remembered for some of the issues that are raised. They're pertinent, they're salient issues, they're important issues. Unfortunately, government has not done some of those things that we think they can do, because I believe that some of those recommendations, as way back as 2.5 years ago, are still coming to haunt us today. And in an environment where, if we just did the right thing, we could be saving this country over $5 billion, $6 billion a year. It's a big issue. From that point of view, that is an achievement. I think we could have done more. Some of us strongly believe, for example, the kerosene subsidy issue is something that does not need to wait till tomorrow.
Now, speaking about the petroleum subsidy report, the investigation, are you worried that more than 2 years after the investigation was conducted by the Senate ad hoc committee and the report was laid, we haven't heard anything about the report, and this assembly is winding down? Are you worried that the report might never see the light of the day?
Unfortunately, it looks like it, doesn't it? It is disturbing. As you know, if you go by the handbook we work with, there are certain things that in our purview of our responsibilities and purview of other people's responsibilities. As members of the committee, we've done our part. We've presented the report, we've laid the report. after that, there's according to our handbook, there's very little else we can do, and it is disturbing, because as I said, these are major issues, and some will argue that action has been taken, but nevertheless, I think as a matter as important as that, there must be a position in the Senate on it, for prosperity's sake, or even in seeing now, because it's clear that even some of the recommendations on that report, even though the House of Representatives did their own, there are some parts of that report, the recommendations today, that have not been adhered to. And if they had been adhered to, we'll have seen certain changes in the management of fuel subsidy, and a lot of savings to the Nigerian government and to the people of Nigeria.